Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Trump administration has frozen $26 billion in funding across Democratic states amid the government shutdown that has left 750,000 federal workers without pay. The U.S. Energy Department has also canceled $7.6 billion in climate projects, escalating partisan tensions as the Senate again failed to pass a stopgap measure. Israeli forces have stopped 14 boats from the Global Sumud Flotilla, while 30 other boats continue towards Gaza. The interception by Israel has sparked global outrage as Turkey condemned it as an act of terror, while Colombian president responded by expelling Israel's diplomatic delegation and terminating a free trade deal with Israel. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of using over 20 drones to strike near Chernobyl and of failing to fix crucial power lines to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, while the Kremlin claimed it is working to restore them. The United States will provide Ukraine with intelligence on long-range energy infrastructure targets inside of Russia and is urging NATO allies to do the same. The move marks President Donald Trump's first major policy shift in support of Kyiv, as Washington also considers sending long-range Tomahawk missiles. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will meet around 50 European heads of state and EU leaders at the European Political Community Summit in Copenhagen today. President Zelensky will also hold a joint press conference with Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen during his visit. G7 finance ministers have vowed to target countries and companies which are still purchasing Russian oil and have agreed on trade measures to cut Russian revenues. Lebanon has reported that 2 people were killed in an Israeli strike in the south of the country, despite a ceasefire agreed in November last year. The attack marks the latest deadly incident between Lebanon and Israel since the ceasefire. Lithuania has urged citizens to build and upgrade bomb shelters amid fears of Russian drone attacks, with only 6,453 shelters, not enough to house the 2.9 million population. Local residents have started to invest to prepare basement bunkers as the government and Interior Ministry launches civil defense programs to enhance readiness. Now we move on. Spain has summoned Israel's top envoy after the interception of the Gaza aid flotilla, a move that has drawn sharp international reactions. Greece's foreign minister has confirmed that 39 boats from the flotilla are now reaching the port of Ashdod, with all passengers reported safe. However, world leaders have voiced strong condemnation and concerns, with posts on social media from the leaders of Malaysia, Pakistan, Bolivia, Ireland, Spain, and Cuba, adding to the growing chorus of criticism. This comes after the United Nations had said earlier that it was closely monitoring the situation as the Global Sumud Flotilla approached Gaza's waters, a mission of more than 40 civilian boats carrying around 500 activists and aid for the war-ravaged enclave. Let's take a look.
We're obviously following the flotilla very closely. We do not want anyone to get hurt, and we want people's rights to be respected.
What is the Secretary General's view in this moment stage? They are about 100 miles away from Gaza. Should the flotilla continue its course or halt? Does he believe such an initiative contributes to peace and the delivery of aid, or could it risk further escalation?
Look, there is a level of advocacy that is needed and welcome regarding the humanitarian situation in Gaza. As for the flotilla, it is not for the Secretary General to tell them what to do. We just want to make sure that everyone is safe.
Yesterday evening, Israeli forces intercepted 13 aid vessels, boarding several and taking control as part of their blockade enforcement, while around 23 boats continued their attempt to reach Gaza. Following the interception, Israel's foreign ministry announced that passengers, including Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, were being transported to Israel, where deportation procedures to Europe would soon begin. Officials also stressed that all those detained are safe and in good health. Demonstrations have erupted across Europe and Latin America, with protesters demanding the release of the activists, while diplomatic tensions deepened as Colombia expelled Israeli diplomats, Turkey denounced the raid as terrorism, and Brazil voiced concern for its citizens on board. Now, for this discussion, we're joined by Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us again. Very good to see you. Now, how do we see this news that's coming in? Do you think that this Sumud Flotilla will be able to reach Gaza, at least some of them, safely? And what does it mean that United Nations said that they are watching? But it seems like they're only watching and they're not doing anything to either take them safely to Israel's port nor Gaza's port.
Suma, good to join you this morning. Let's just remind ourselves there is a war going on the 7th of October 2023. Hamas and others then crossed over to Israel, 1,200 Israeli citizens killed and 250 hostages taken. This is a war zone. Now, the other thing that people may not be aware of is that Israel is also concerned because of drone technology, etc. There has been smuggling that has been going in. Hence, we've seen reports over the last nearly 2 years of this war that Israel has shot drones going into their country, flying over to Gaza, etc., where they're smuggling arms, etc. So I ask people to look into that. So in the context of that, when you've got a flotilla coming in, and then you find paperwork from a designated support group of the PCPA, that the Israeli authorities have then been publishing this in Israeli news, that this paperwork has then been found in Gaza. This is a group that was created in 2018 and recognized as a terrorist group and an arm of Hamas by the Israeli authority in 2021. And then the accusation is that they are behind this flotilla as well. So you then have a flotilla going into Gaza. From there, they are turning around and going, is there food on here? What else could be on those boats that are nefarious? So it's no wonder that they are turning around and going, no, we are not going to, we do not want this, and we are going to inspect the boats or stop them and then escort people off. So this is what is playing out. And again, in my humble opinion, if you look at who was actually making various comments to the UN, protesting about this, of course, they are then, to them, they would then ideologically be supporters of what they would then call the Palestinian cause. And that is what is then unfolding as well. It's more politicization on all of this, which is then contributing to all of the media chatter that goes back to the UNGA meeting that has just stopped, and all these people standing up and going, we want a two-state solution, we recognize this, recognize that. So it's this complete and utter political pile-on in regard to Israel, and this flotilla is yet another act of that, Asuma.
And now looking also at the international responses, Mark, how do the international responses to Israel's interception of this Global Sumud Flotilla, like from the Colombian leader, that was very sharp, and some other countries reflect the broader geopolitical dynamics of Israel and Palestinian conflict?
Well, then you have to go down this rabbit hole of looking who the PCPA are, who other groups are like that, what other involvement do they then have around the world, how they actually raise money, how they then interfere and align themselves with an ideology that is close to them. And it's then no wonder that the Israeli authorities, remember at the moment there is this 20-point peace plan of ending the war in Gaza that is still now up in the air, waiting for Hamas to make a decision on that, even though they've spoken to the BBC, even though right now it looks as though no, they will turn this deal down. That is still up in the air, and Israel, understandably, is then continuing its maneuvers within Gaza City and pushing ahead to then completely rid Gaza of Hamas. So all of this is all up in the air. Then you've got the flotilla. Then you've got all the other comments internationally, as I will use that phrase, as a pile in as well, to then pressurize the Israeli authorities. So all of this, assume, as I say again, all of this is now out there in the playing field, and we in this field, and we just wait. We're waiting for Hamas to make their decision, and then internationally, of course, people will make whatever comment they want. But at the end of the day, the Israeli government will then do what is best, and Israelis will do what's best for Israel, no matter what comments are going to be made by many other nations that we've seen at the UNGA as an example. Asuma.
Right. Thank you, Mark, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we now move to Europe. German Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt has said that authorities have prevented a terrorist attack targeting Jewish sites. Police arrested 3 men suspected of working for Hamas, attempting to obtain weapons for attacks in Germany, ahead of the 2nd anniversary of Hamas's attack on Israel. Prosecutors say the suspects plan assassinations of Israeli and Jewish institutions. Dobrindt reveals a known Hamas-linked suspect entered Germany months ago and stayed under surveillance while trying to get weapons. He warned that Germany is clearly a target for terrorists. This follows the February trial in Berlin of 4 Hamas members accused of plotting attacks on Jewish institutions in Europe. Germany remains a strong ally of Israel and keeps tight security around Jewish sites. Let's listen into what Alexander Dobrindt has said.
Ja, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, heute ist es gelungen, eine terroristische Bedrohungslage abzuwehren. Es waren Terroristen, die der Hamas zuzuordnen sind, die verdichtete Anschlagspläne in Deutschland vorbereitet haben. Die sind seit längerer Zeit, seit einigen Monaten im Fokus der Behörden und unter Beobachtung. Vor einigen Monaten ist ein uns bekannter Terrorverdächtiger mit Hamas-Kontakten nach Deutschland eingereist. Seitdem ist diese Person unter Beobachtung und hat in dieser Zeit mit Kontaktaufnahmen versucht, entsprechend Waffen und Munition zu beschaffen, um einen Anschlag durchzuführen. Heute sind auch Waffen und Munition sichergestellt worden. Wir gehen davon aus, dass diese Bedrohungslage konkret war.
Now we go back for this discussion to Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for staying with us. Now, what challenges does Germany face in balancing its national security with upholding civil liberties, particularly regarding surveillance, monitoring of individuals linked to groups like Hamas?
Suma, this is a continual balance. This is what's going on across European countries, and also as reported from the UK, that they are then following 40 to 45,000 the individuals of this ideology that wishes to do harm to the UK. So this is European-wide. I mean, I could not sadly see the translation of what he is saying. But the other thing to make this point is that Germany, of course, right now has said we are not going to recognize a Palestinian state. They, because of history, understandably, stand by their, which they learned from, stand by their Jewish community, and they're making that very. They're making those statements in regard to the security of Jewish synagogues and German Jewish citizens. Yes, you're right, as in you say, in a balance, because when they have Oktoberfest, the big beer festival, I believe there's just been some explosions in the Munich area over the last couple of weeks, I think, putting down to a domestic issue. But then there's bomb threats, then they have to shut things down and search to make sure that it's all secure for their citizens of Germany. This is a constant, ongoing disruption. We've seen that in Christmas markets where people are using cars as a weapon to then mow down people and kill people. The last thing we want is totalitarianism and tyranny and a complete lockdown. What we have to do is then ask people like Angela Merkel, you open the floodgates in regard to migration that came into Germany. Did you know or check who was actually coming into the country as well? That would have nefarious mean. They want to be do bad to Germany and disrupt that society. That is a problem across Europe and in many other across European countries. We can name them. Whether that's from Sweden, France, the UK, etc. But they need to address this issue and be honest about it. Asuma.
And you building on your answer, Mark, how can these European countries enhance intelligence sharing, cooperation to prevent any terrorist threats targeting minority communities and other high-risk sites, while making sure that their democratic values and also their the need for protecting individual freedoms and privacy is protected?
Well, this is the conundrum that they're all in, because for some of us who then may seem a little bit cynical, when people in the UK are then going, oh, we need a digital ID to work out who's coming into the country, then the rest of us are turning around and saying, well, we're citizens here. We don't need a digital ID at all. It's very, very simple. Have strong borders and police those borders and make sure that whoever's coming into this country, we should know who they are. And also in regard to the illegal crossings, illegal entry across borders, that needs to stop. But this is all. Various people are making a lot of money out of this and facilitating this. But as we are seeing, people are tightening up in other countries in regard to the immigration flows that are coming on. Now, it's all very well the UN then creating what's called the Global Migration Compact in regard to irregular immigration. There are so many people on the move, and it's also a weaponization. You can then say on the extreme that if you actually then disagree with Western civilization, this is one way to attack it and bring it down. Then on the other side, if you are into totalitarian and having control of your citizens, then you will then look at bringing digital ID and bringing other controls, what's said on the internet, etc. And you raise a very, very important question of how do you get that balance? Well, I will say to you that one of the most important things in regard to getting that balance is to have strong borders for each individual country in the first place, so that people know who is coming into their country and checking them out. And that is a very good starting point, I would advise. Asuma.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mark Sutherland for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news all the way from London. Thank you very much. Now we move on and we stay in Europe. The European Political Community Summit in Copenhagen, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has warned that Europe is facing a hybrid war amid escalating security threats from Russia. She further emphasized the need for a united European response to counter repeated Russian airspace violations and drone incursions. Frederiksen has called for enhanced military and financial support for Ukraine, as well as strengthened European defense capabilities. Let's listen into what she has said.
There is not only hybrid attacks, there is a hybrid war going on in Europe right now. It is part of rearming ourselves, because when I say rearming Europe, it means also make a more robust European society. I think we have to focus, of course, on the cyber attacks and the risk of sabotage and anti-drone capacities. And therefore, it was good that we had discussions with the European Union yesterday about building a kind of a drone wall that can be used, of course, especially when it comes to hybrid war. I think everybody underestimated how big a threat Russia actually is. Not saying that we haven't done anything, because we are doing a lot. And my hope is that everybody will recognize that we have to look at Ukraine as the first line of defense. So everything we do in Ukraine is defending ourselves in the rest of Europe. So we are doing a lot, but we have to speed up and we have to scale up. I would say that 2035 will.
Now we have a breaking news. The Kremlin has issued a statement regarding talks of the U.S. transferring Tomahawk missiles to Kyiv, saying that Russia would react appropriately to such a transfer. The statement also addressed the U.S. urging NATO allies to provide intelligence to Ukraine, with the Kremlin stating that the U.S. is already providing intelligence on a continuous basis. The Kremlin has also warned that the confiscation of Russian assets by the EU would not go unanswered. It further added that there has been no communication from the U.S. regarding the New START treaty proposal. Now we move on to Asia. Rescuers in East Java, Indonesia are racing against time to find dozens of people still believed to be trapped under the rubble of a school building that has collapsed on Monday. Officials say at least 6 students have been pronounced dead and about 100 have been injured in the tragedy. Over 13 people have been freed from debris since the rescue efforts began on Monday, out of which 2 have died during the treatment. While authorities have said that crying and shouting could still be heard from under the rubble, the rescue chief has noted that while the concrete slabs are being moved, this could endanger the lives of the survivors. Anxious relatives are camping out on mats outside the school, waiting for news on their loved ones. A board has been also put up by the search team listing the names of those still unaccounted for, while parents demand answers from the authorities. Parents have also complained that there is no apology from the management of the Islamic boarding school, and no one has taken the responsibility for this tragedy. There are questions being raised on the substandard construction of the school, or as to why were the students conducting prayers on the 1st floor while the construction was underway on the 3rd and 4th floor. Now for this discussion, we are joined by retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, Senior Strategic and Defense Expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, how can authorities in Indonesia, how should they improve safety regulation for school buildings looking at this news?
First of all, Asuma, very, very sad to hear this incident.
Yeah.
Because, it is a sheer case of negligence. It does happen in our country also at times when we see this type of unauthorized construction. Now, let us understand the root cause of the problem. The first aspect is that it was an old building. 2 extra floors were being constructed. So, structurally, the building was not able to take on this load, and they are civic laws, municipal clearances required whenever you carry out proper construction of a building, the design and whatever is the structural strength of the pillars and the concrete has to be assessed by the authorities. They are qualified engineers who are assigned these tasks in every governance model. I think this was a failure because possibly may have been circumvented due to many reasons. And a second important aspect is that the school authorities are also required to take on this blame of allowing a prayer or a class happening on the first floor when the construction was going on to the second and the third floor, because this is normally against the norms. A third aspect, what I'm observing is that these schools are overcrowded in the sense that if a particular building can take on X number of students, we find that a very large number of students are being admitted in these schools, which are not able to take on that infrastructure requirement. So it's a very, very serious aspect. I think certain amount of regulatory mechanisms have to be enforced by the government authorities, which I think has not been done. The permits which have been issued need to be investigated, that what kind of permissions were accorded by the authorities, who has accorded the permission. I think a transparent inquiry has to go into it. And the most important aspect now is the rescue of these children. I believe there is a possibility to do tunneling also into this thing, because in case the children are trapped inside, it will be very, very difficult to disturb the concrete as of now, because it may lead to further the debris actually falling again. So it's a very, very delicate operation. I think the authorities or the Indonesian
Yes.
disaster relief organization, because every country has a
Yes.
disaster relief organization, like we have the NDMA and the NDRF with us. Indonesia also has these organizations with them, and these will have to be got into an immediate kind of a mode unless we are able to recover things in a faster time frame. There may be more loss of lives.
Yes, with that, I would like to thank Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now, at least 15 people have been killed, including 3 cops, and over 200 people were injured in a violent clash between protesters and security forces in Dadial region of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The unrest, now entering its 3rd day, began over the government's failure to address 38 key demands and has escalated into a widespread agitation against systematic oppression. Protests have been led by the Jammu Kashmir Joint Awami Action Committee across Muzaffarabad, Rawalakot, Neelam Valley and Kotli. The demonstrators are demanding political reforms, including the abolition of assembly seats reserved for Kashmiri refugees, tax relief subsidies on floor, and completion of development projects. Authorities have responded with force, deploying additional troops and shutting down communications. Markets and businesses remain closed as the region remains tense with ongoing clashes. Now we go back to retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, what impact do these communication shutdowns in? Looking at this news, what's your reaction?
First of all, I think this has been one of those problems in Pak-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Uh, and it is not a recent phenomenon. This protests and these type of actions we have been seeing in POKJ since quite some time now. The problem is that when you have a system of governance which does not have an internal element, in the sense that the people of the region have less participation into their own matters of governance, and you transport people from the other parts of Pakistan in positions of power here. For example, I will try to amplify this. We have this Punjabis dominating everything in Pakistan, and a similar kind of a situation is there in Balochistan also. And the grievance of the people, when you talk to Baluchis, whom I come across in various TV programs, they have a singular concern that we are being dominated by the Punjabis and we are not having a say in our own affairs. The same problem we are seeing happening in POKJ. And the problem here is compounded due to a shortage of resources. And in this case, a classic example is that you have those hydro power projects on Mangla River and the Neelam and the Jhelum rivers. There is a generation of power to the extent of 2,750 megawatts here, whereas only 350 megawatts is being made available to the people of POJK. So there is a grievance. The cost of per unit of power is also very expensive, and then a rising cost of living. Every commodity here is is of greater cost than in other parts of Punjab or Sindh or other parts of Pakistan, because you see this actually area. This is a mountainous region. It is a hard region to live with, and there has not been adequate development in this area. There are no good schools, colleges, hospitals, and infrastructure. So this area has not actually developed. It could become a beautiful tourist spot, and if you start comparing POJK with the Jammu and Kashmir in India, you would find there is a stark difference in infrastructure development, and one last aspect is there is a lot of unemployment in this area. So people are hard pressed, and people from outside are coming and occupying their land and using it for their own gains without passing it on to the people of this region. So there is a sense of alienation within the people of Pak-occupied Kashmir, and I think this is leading to a lot of resentment. And now this movement has gained a lot of momentum. As you see, it has spread over from Muzaffarabad to the other areas of Pak-occupied Kashmir, and I think the government will have to be slightly more sensitive in dealing with this mass uprising, because if you are going to use force, you are going to further alienate the people. I think the Pakistani Prime Minister should fly down to POKJ, talk to the people there, talk to the leaders there, and try to understand their grievances, because you see, unless you listen to their problems and try to give them some kind of a solution, this movement is going to further escalate. And once it escalates, because it's a border town with India, it is bound to have repercussions. We may have a situation where the refugees will like to enter into India, so that becomes a serious problem to handle. And a very important aspect here is there is a large presence of Pakistani military here and Pakistan Army here, and especially if you also include the areas of Gilgit, Baltistan, where the CPEC is also going through. So it is a very a kind of a sensitive area, and I think the Pakistan government would have to take certain reconciliatory measures to address the grievances of the people of this region.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.